Right, so before we start, I was sent some more lovely fan art. This piece is by one of my lovely patrons, Quax. As you can tell, he's very special. It's beautiful. The second is by Colourful Gem, another glorious piece of work by another patron, and the third was a second piece sent by Nestle. It's beautiful, thank you. Second thing, before we get into the subject of today's video, tonight, 9:30 PM GMT, I'm going to be streaming 7 Days to Die over on the Omegon Plays channel. We just hit 1k, just gotta get those watch hours up to be demonetized. Yay. I recently had Pencil Cookie, a very lovely person, make this thumbnail for me for all future 7 Day streams. Please consider following her. Her Twitter link is in the description below. She's a very talented artist and she's just started doing commission work. This thumbnail being one of them. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about those pesky white boys. Because when it comes to the Equalities Human Rights Commission, or whatever they're called, the EHRC, let's go with that because I can't remember the actual name, they like to contradict themselves. On one hand, they will make an article indicating that young boys from working class families that are predominantly white are struggling to achieve, unlike everyone else. The first thought that comes into most of our heads is, well, don't you think that's unsurprising when you consider you've been pushing to elevate everyone else, and by doing so tear down white boys in the first place? Or is it perhaps because the interest of those white boys sometimes comes from the family, and those adults have suffered at the hands of intersectionality? Sorry, I mean diversity. Sorry, I mean equality. You all know what I mean, in the sense that what we have seen over the last 10 years, to elevate the status of people who have not received equal treatment, one has to tear others down, because apparently no one is capable of elevating people in the face of it without harming someone else in the process. And I mean harming not in the sense of, well, it was just your masculinity being checked. No, I mean in the sense that, well, you've done well, you've worked hard, but I'm still going to tear you down because of the hue of your epidermis, and because of the chromosomes that you had no choice over. Congratulations. A perfect example of this, by the way, would be WWE at the moment. I love that they're elevating the ladies, but to do it, they're having to rip off the Four Horsemen. I love the tag team thing, by the way. Not the first female tag team champions, but sure, go with it. The fact that they've had to rip off Stone Cold for Becky. Becky's talented, she doesn't need the man gimmick. Oh, and throwing Nia Jax into the Royal Rumble, because that was never done before by, like, China or Beth Phoenix, and only one of the three that I've mentioned can actually wrestle. Doesn't matter, you know what I mean. I know I've gone off topic ever so slightly, but you understand the point I am making. The interesting thing here is, the Equality Commission, the EHRC or ERHC or whatever they're called, Equality and Human Rights Commission, so EHRC, have cropped up again in the sense that they've decided now we need to address something that actually makes sense by implying it's bad. So where we have boys from working class backgrounds that are white struggling to achieve in academia, when it came to job training, there was an unfair share of trainee places given to white boys. This is in reference to apprenticeships. Now, apprenticeships are a fantastic way for some people to, instead of going to university and walking away with a mountain of debt and a degree that comes on paper that is probably just about as good as that Poundland loo roll I showed you all after Christmas. Let's face it, for the most part degrees are redundant. Apprenticeships have taken their place. And I get it, because that actually is more of a reasonable thing to do, instead of focusing all your might to get one thing in life and have it taken away from you to train in the thing you want to be. It is unsurprising, with more and more boys walking away from academia, that they would instead go in the direction of apprenticeships. How this is a bad thing, I don't know, but of course, and I have to put my tinfoil hat on for this, it's understandable that because more boys are going somewhere else, we now have to chastise them for going there. Apparently there isn't a single safe space for guys at all. So basically, employers need to reserve places on apprenticeship schemes for young women, disabled people and ethnic minorities to create a more level playing field, which is what the Equality and Human Rights Commission has said. The government has pledged to create over 3 million apprenticeships in England by next year, but almost 90% of those are aged 16 to 24 and white, compared with 82% of the population, which means we need to get that 90% down representation-wise by 8%. Because that will totally appease the moron that came up with this report. That indicates that the majority of men are going in the direction of work-based training, which is more practical, as opposed to going to further education or higher education, if you will, to get qualifications that have no real use in the real world. Do you remember the cynics that would say, when are you ever going to use a quadratic equation in the real world? Many would say, because they're enlightened and have an IQ over 2, it's not about solving or using a quadratic equation, it's how your mind worked to solve the equation. The problem-solving trait is quite a desired one, which is why when you do on-the-work training, you're doing something more focused in that field, and are then learning about and know more about the problems that you would encounter in the workplace. Which is why I couldn't give much of a damn about degrees these days, even though I myself went down the academic path. I think in hindsight, I would have done better, and my mind would have been better served doing an apprenticeship. Now, while there are similar numbers of female and male apprentices, women are significantly underrepresented in the better paid industries, which leads me to believe the only way to do that would be to exile a lot of the men at the top, unless you're doing population representation, in which case perhaps it's okay, or create a specific apprenticeship for top paying jobs and only give them out to women, disabled people and ethnic minorities. Oh, and people that drink soy, although you could argue they are also disabled. With the National Apprenticeship Week starting on Monday, so naturally there's going to be a lot of virtue in politics, certainly in PMQs, the Equality and Human Rights Commission says firms need to take steps to get more people from minority groups into trainee schemes, favouring them against other similarly qualified candidates if necessary. I've got a fantastic idea. What with the increase of knife crime, 90% of which is black on black, why don't we train them to be butchers? Put their knife skills to good use. I'm a problem solver, everyone. Now, under the 2010 Equality Act, many employers are not really making use of the powers given to them to tackle the disadvantage and underrepresentation experienced by certain groups. According to the report by the Commission, with the University of Chester and Young Women's Trust being quoted as saying, women continue to be shut out in key parts of the economy due to outdated gender stereotypes and a lack of support, which is absolute bollocks. We need a level playing field in the workplace for women, disabled people and ethnic minorities, which is why the Young Women's Trust are the perfect people to help all those groups. It's not like within their name they are exclusionary on the face of it. In England, women make up only 5% of people starting in apprenticeships in construction. I wonder why. When I did a GMVQ in construction in the built environment, there were 2 girls on that course and about 60 guys. By the time we finished, there was 1 girl and 20 guys. I know that sounds like a setup to an orgy. It wasn't. In contrast, women were overrepresented in apprenticeships in poorly paid sectors, such as hairdressing and early years care. Well, might I recommend you go vote Labour and introduce the socialist utopia that doesn't exist anywhere, because there is no real socialism, in the sense that those countries that supposedly have socialism have billionaires running the country and all the resources. I'm off topic though. By the way, if you're asserting that the value of a job is based on how well it pays, you and I need to have a little conversation about job satisfaction and how much someone enjoys their job. How one quantifies the value of the job, of course, that is certainly an argument for another day. Maybe you could just blame capitalism for it, that hairdressers aren't paid as much as those working on a construction site. The Commission, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, has warned that too many companies are hesitant about using positive action because they're worried about inadvertently discriminating against others, which is unsurprising because just because someone is white, straight and or male doesn't mean they cannot be the victim of discrimination. While I am not white, I am a straight male, and I have been discriminated against when going for a job because I wasn't the hot blonde. In fact, I've lost job opportunities because money talks. People were paid or monetarily incentivized to hire over me, the skilled worker, in the field I was going for anyway. This is further cemented because last week, the Cheshire police were found guilty of discriminating against a white heterosexual 25-year-old man because it used positive action in an unlawful way, where he had applied for a job in 2017 but lost out to other candidates, but the employment tribunal found that the man who had lost the job opportunity had been discriminated against on the basis of his sexual orientation, race, and sex. Fact is, discrimination happens across the board. Another fact, men are moving away from academia, or going to university, to do apprenticeships. Yes, at the moment, the majority are white, because they were the first ones smart enough to realise, the tide has turned and this is more practical. I want to live a good life, a better life. Why not get a job with the company and earn my way in? Which an apprenticeship allows you to do. Because, you're supposed to earn everything in life and not be given it. I guess this does count as meritocracy. Anyway, as with all things, I would love to know what you think, so please let me know in the comments below if you think it is right that white people, or straight white men specifically, should be somehow held back by 8% to allow for other people to take opportunities away from them, because those pesky white people keep breeding, and those same pesky white people are trying to take our jobs that we haven't earned. Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely Tuesday, and thank you all for listening.